7.958 puntos. Russell 2000 ha reducido un poquito esas correcciones, pierde ya menos de un 3, un 2,7 a la baja, 1.828 puntos, con un índice de volatilidad VIX ciertamente disparado, avanzando un 18% en los $35,09. Y vamos a hablar en los próximos minutos de esta situación, del impacto sobre el mercado de renta variable, también del impacto sobre el dólar, del impacto sobre el oro, de la guerra arancelaria y también de la guerra entre Donald Trump y Jerome Powell. Nos acompaña Según Canavan, lead US Economist in Oxford Economic. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
How are markets reacting to the perceived politicization of monetary policy in this moment?
Well, I think you see a few things happening at the same time. You're seeing long end rates rise on a combination of increased inflation expectations under the promise that if the Federal Reserve were to become more politicized, it would be more likely to keep rates lower, which would be more likely to raise inflation. At the same time, the politicization of the Federal Reserve also just adds to the uncertainty in the markets that we've already been seeing in response to the recent tariff decisions. So that uncertainty is also making investors a little bit more wary about U.S. assets overall. So long-term rates are rising because investors are selling Treasury securities. At the same time, that greater uncertainty in combination with the risks of inflation is also causing them to sell other dollar-denominated assets. We've seen equities fall quite sharply today, and we've seen the dollar index fall quite sharply. So they're broadly selling a lot of dollar-denominated assets, with the exception, of course, of gold, which has been benefiting from the recent safe haven flows. Again, if you see increased risk for dollar-denominated assets, you see increased risks for the markets and increased risks for the economy. Investors looking for a safe place to put assets have been fleeing towards gold at the moment.
What kind of pressure is Trump putting on the Federal Reserve, and how has Powell responded?
So far, the pressure has just been verbal. President Trump has been arguing that Fed Chair Powell, in insulting language, he's been arguing that Fed Chair Powell needs to reduce rates. Fed Chair Powell has, while not responding today, has said repeatedly in the past that the Federal Reserve will not respond to politics. They will respond to the economy. They will do what Federal Reserve members as a whole believe is the best thing to keep inflation well contained and the thing that will allow the U.S. economy to grow most strongly over the longer term. So overall, Powell has taken largely a hands-off approach to President Trump's comments. I wouldn't say he's ignored them, but he has said that they have no effect on Fed policy. And I think that's the tone he's going to continue to take. To try and get into a political spat with the president is not a good idea for any Fed president, and I don't see Fed Chair Powell changing that.
Are investors pricing in a potential recession or a loss of confidence in U.S. economic policy?
Yeah, so this does damage some of the confidence in the U.S. economy, right? Because it risks politicizing the Fed, which would be a long-term negative for the economy. Over the near term, over the course of this year, we don't currently see a recession. We have reduced our annualized growth for 2025 from up 1.7% to up only 0.5%. That came in the wake of the tariffs. So we do think that growth will slow considerably this year. We don't think there's a recession, but we do think that if there are any more difficulties, that is, if tariffs were to increase any further, or if there are just some unforeseen circumstances, it wouldn't take much to push us into a recession. But there's no reason at the moment to assume we'll see a recession. So our baseline is that we'll just have very slow growth over the course of this year, and that growth will start to improve next year in response to a combination of factors. In particular, the Federal Reserve should start easing monetary policy later this year. We expect that they will lower the Fed funds target rate in December and aggressively next year. And also, Congress is currently working on a spending bill and a tax cut bill, and that should provide some additional fiscal stimulus to the economy later this year or into next year. So assuming we can skirt a recession this year, we do expect to see slightly better growth next year.
John, how has the dollar performed against other major currencies amid these tensions?
Yeah, the dollar has not performed well. So historically, what you would typically see is that in times of a flight from risk assets, that is when equities are declining, commodities are declining, people are expecting a weaker global economy, normally what you would see would be a strong bid for the US dollar, as it would be viewed as a serious safe haven, a good place to just park your money and wait for the rest of the world to settle. In this case, because of the tariff-induced nature of this sell-off, all dollar-denominated assets are getting hit. Investors globally are less confident that the U.S. will remain a key safe haven going forward. So as a result, even the dollar is falling quite sharply. It's fallen 11% since its February peak, and it continues to weaken today. It does suggest a near-term loss of faith in the U.S. again as a safe haven, but we are convinced that once we get through the current turmoil, assuming that we avoid recession, that the longer-term outlook for the dollar is still relatively stable, that further declines in the dollar should be much slower, and that this is not, again, a long-term exit of the U.S. economy, but in the near term, there are just too many uncertainties and too many risks, and investors are just not as comfortable with dollar-denominated assets as they have been in the past.
First dollar after gold. Is gold reflecting investors' fear regarding Trump's economic strategy?
It is. So given the greater global risks, the gold is really just the one item, the key item that is still finding safe haven demand. So we've seen a significant rise in gold, up more than 33% since December in dollar terms. I do think that can continue as long as the uncertainty regarding the U.S. economy, the uncertainty regarding tariff policy, the uncertainty regarding the Fed, as long as these are with us, there is room for gold to continue to climb longer term. I would note that the extent of the rally in gold and the extent of the sell-off in the dollar have grown a little bit extreme over the near term. So I think there's probably room for some unwinding of the recent trades. That is, we could see a pullback in gold and a bounce in the dollar before we go on to see additional increases in gold and additional declines in the dollar. But that's really just largely a technical trading issue. Just simply the markets are overdone over the near term on a technical level, but the longer term trends remain intact.
Question, can the upward trend in gold prices continue if tension between Trump and Powell persist?
I do. As I mentioned, I do think that gold can continue to climb if the tensions persist. I think that, again, over the near term, I expect that there is some risk that gold may pull back from its recent highs. But again, that is just a short-term technical trading factor. It is what's referred to among traders as overbought. So there's room for some profit taking there over the near term. But I do believe that the longer-term trend can continue, that gold can continue to rise over the long term. And by that, I mean, in particular, over the next 6 to 9 months, as we get through all of these concerns regarding the Federal Reserve, regarding tariffs, regarding the broader fiscal policy for the United States.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us in our show. John Canavan, lead us economist in Oxford Economics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Pues vamos con la señal que nos llega en directo, porque a las puertas del Vaticano, de la Casa del